The Honorable Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland. Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad that you're here. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, Dawn. First of all, thank you for having me on your show and giving me the opportunity to, share the message about what Democrats are doing. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd say 6, given what's happening right now, but looking forward to going home and spending time in the district.
Let's get into it. Yeah, looking forward to going home and spending time in the district. But wouldn't you much rather be there interviewing or voting on Ghislaine Maxwell or interviewing her or working on those things than going home?
Yeah, there is some important legislation that the Republicans are just refusing to bring to the floor because they're afraid that in the Rules Committee, which determines what comes to the floor, that they will have to vote yes or no on amendments related to releasing the Epstein files. And Don, I want to point out that 10 Republicans have already signed on saying they want the files released.
Yeah. So why aren't they doing it? Why is Mike Johnson? Why is the speaker doing this?
I'd say the same thing, the same reason you've seen this GOP just bend the knee to whatever Trump wants. They're afraid of him. And here's what's so bizarre about all this. How is releasing the files bad for them politically? Their own base is mad right now that they are not releasing the files. President Trump ran on this in 2024. And so it just makes no sense. But a lot of things that we've experienced in DC with the GOP in leadership makes no sense.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think, beyond that,
Mhm.
uh, your estimation, why doesn't he want to release those? Why is he so gung ho? Him and all of his supporters were so gung ho about these files, and then all of a sudden you have this,
Yeah,
abrupt stop, 180.
the abrupt stop, slam on the brakes, put the car in park must mean that there's something in there that they don't want to go public. But again, I come back to the fact that, President Trump in his first term was president starting in 2016. He was president when Epstein was tried, convicted, put in jail, and died. And he campaigned in 2024 on releasing the files. And remember, too, his FBI director and folks were talking about, yes, we're going to release it. And then all of a sudden, Pam Bondi decides there's nothing there or it's someone else's fault, and then they're not going to release anything. So it really is just a bizarre turn of events. But also, too, it screams, I'm guilty of doing something I should not have been doing.
Yeah, and we can say perhaps he's not, but they're
Right.
certainly acting like there's guilt somewhere, or they're hiding. There's a reason to hide something,
Yeah,
right?
it's just strange. And it's just strange again. 10 Republicans are with Democrats who want to release these files, but the vast majority of that caucus is afraid to even take this vote.
I was aghast. I mean, seriously, not much surprises me. And I thought I had seen everything coming from this president until I
Right.
saw him sitting in the Oval Office and, in order to deflect, blame Barack Obama, or at least accuse Barack Obama, the former president Barack Obama, of treason and sedition and having undue influence in the Russia investigation, which he says affected the 2016 election, although he won the 2016 election. My jaw was on the floor.
Right. It's insane. And when I heard that, I thought to myself, well, sir, you won. So what are you talking about? Number two, in 2020, a bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee issued a report about the 2016 election, and it showed that there was Russian interference to try and help Trump. Marco Rubio, who is Trump's Secretary of State, signed off on that report. And so I'd say this is very typical deflection, gaslighting, and projecting because they know they were the ones who did this, but they're so desperate to create distractions with the public that we don't talk about what's happening with Epstein and all the other horrible things that they're doing to the American people.
Speaking of the American people, what is the danger here to the American people? Because I feel like we don't have a shared sense of reality anymore. We don't have a shared sense of
Yeah.
what's fact and what's not. If you look at all of the fact checkers, they'll tell you that, Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump are conflating information. Barack
Yep.
Obama said that Russia did try to influence the election, but no votes were changed, and Donald
Right.
Trump was legitimately elected. But what is
Right.
the danger to the American people and perhaps our democracy and to America?
No, that's a really good question. What's dangerous about this is that anyone can make up any old crazy lie, and there are enough people who, who don't live politics the way we do, who will believe it. And that, as you know, is dangerous for democracy. It undermines our very important institutions. I mean, think about your profession as a journalist, Don, and how things have changed so rapidly, even in the last 5 years. What's true? What's not true? And then add in there the ability to create all these deep fakes with AI. And
Mm-hmm.
so what's at stake here is that people don't know fact from fiction. It also plays into the idea of confirmation bias, where if
Right.
you already want to believe something, you can always find a place to verify it. And it just undermines the credibility of, of organizations that provide news, factual news, and also it just hurts democracy. So it's very dangerous. And I think this is why when I talk to folks, I often say this in large groups or small groups: be a discerning consumer of information.
Hmm.
Make sure it's legit. And if you hear something that sounds a little off, insist on fact checking. Ask people, why do you think that's true? And sometimes, as you know, the media source will reveal what the bias is and whether or not it's true.
Well, look, the only party I believe that's fighting for democracy and at least trying to do so um, is the Democratic Party. And
Yep.
so folks are concerned about, folks have, I should say, there's very high interest among the folks, among the people, about the future of the Democratic Party. Do
Yeah.
you believe that the Democratic Party is handling this, responding to this, leading on this story, especially the Epstein story? Because that's the only thing that seems to be penetrating. It's sad. It's more important, I believe, to our country that millions and millions of people are going to get kicked off of their Medicaid or Medicare.
Right.
But this is the only thing. This is the number one story of interest in the country is the Epstein thing. First, let's start with the response to that and then the future of the party. Are Democrats responding to this story? Should they be discussing it more? I'm also hearing that some people are so nervous about, oh, I don't want to touch that Epstein story with the 10-foot pole. I don't want to, it's just
Yeah.
beneath me. I was taught as a journalist, do not, don't judge the news, just do it.
Right.
Perhaps
I mean,
they're
I would,
not doing that for politicians or for Democrats.
yeah, I mean, I would say overall that every one of those possible responses is justifiable based on who you are, what your congressional district is, and what people expect of you. But I think you raise a really good point in
Right,
this.
right,
People are losing health care.
right.
Children are getting food snatched away from them. The economy is going to see prices go way up. They are already. We know energy prices are going up. So there are a lot of things happening to the American people, yet the news cycles are focusing on the salaciousness of the Epstein files. And I will say this, you want justice for the victims of the Epstein files, but it feels as though the victims are never the center of this. It's everyone else. And so clearly it's being politicized. But I do believe that the Democrats can walk and chew gum. We must remind the American public of all the terrible things that this administration is doing. We can also amplify what's happening with Epstein, the hypocrisy of it. And again, the fact that 10 Republicans are with us on this and understand that these files should be released. And then on top of that, Don, we have to offer a vision for what we want for this country. And it's not that complicated. People want to live in safe, decent housing that they can afford, whether they're renters or buyers. They want access to good schools for their kids. They want high quality healthcare that's not going to break them financially. They want to be safe in neighborhoods. They want a decent job. They want to retire with dignity. And they want to be left alone to live their lives, right? That's the American dream. And I feel like sometimes in politics, all that gets lost on this. So that's what Democrats stand for, is making sure that those dreams come true. But also, we have a duty to define the GOP, and defining them with their fear of Trump, refusing to release the Epstein files, and all the unjust, horrible things they're doing to the American people. That's the party, and that's how we win.
Support comes from Z-Biotics. Now, I have to tell you about this game-changing product that I use before a night out with drinks. It's called Pre-Alcohol. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists. They invented it to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct. It's not dehydration that is to blame for rough days after drinking. So pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you're going to feel your best the next morning. I first gave pre-alcohol a try at the start of the summer before, a few margaritas. I drank it before my first sip, and you wouldn't believe how on top of my game I felt the very next morning. So it worked. So summer is here right now, which means more opportunities to celebrate the warm weather. So don't forget your ZBiotics pre-alcohol. Go to zbiotics.com/lemon drops to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use lemon drops at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/lemon drops and use the code lemon drop. Okay, let's talk more. Let's dig into that a little bit more with more detail
Yeah.
about the future of the party, because folks are concerned about there aren't any. What about the bench? What about the
Hmm.
younger folks? What about the progressive side of the party? It seems like, especially we're here in New York City,
Yeah.
and I can read the tea leaves. I see the zeitgeist. I see what people are interested in.
Hmm.
The folks who are more outspoken and the folks who are leaning into the progressive side of the party seem to be the most popular at this point. They seem to
Hmm.
be doing what Donald Trump did in the 2024 election, and that is animating a part of the electorate that's not usually so animated or energized to go
Right.
vote, and that's younger people. So where are young people in this party? Where are the new voices in this party? Where's the and also folks want, that's a whole nother subject. We'll talk about it. Want the Democrats to get rid of the purity tests. Because look who's leading the Republican Party. Look who's appointed to the highest offices in the land.
Right.
People who have no business being there, or people
Yep.
beyond that, people who are very flawed people, but yet and
Yes.
still, Republicans don't throw them away. So I know that's a big loaded question, but go on,
Yeah,
figure it out.
well, let me take one. Let me take this by segment. So,
Yes, ma'am.
I
Yes, ma'am.
reject the idea that with Democrats, this is a battle of progressive versus moderate. This, for me, is about good versus evil,
Hmm.
doing the right thing and doing the wrong thing. And so, Democrats have a big tent. We often have these family fights in public, but at the end of the day, we have to come together and say we are united. We do not have the luxury of sitting elections out because we saw what happened. And we all have to say, here's what I will say: Black
Mm-hmm.
women, the 92%, we consistently show up for the Democratic Party. We are
Yeah.
the base of the Democratic Party. And actually, Black men too, right? The numbers aren't as high, but we know what's at stake, and we don't demand a purity test, and we don't demand that we get every single thing we want. We understand what is at stake here because we have to reduce harm or try to keep harm from happening. So I wish that the Democrats in general would take a cue from what Black voters do, because we know what's at stake. We do our part every single election cycle. But to your question about younger voters and energizing folks, that's a very, very compelling message. And to your point about Trump is good at that, and some folks on the progressive side are good at that, but they're not mutually exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And energizing voters isn't something that just young people can do. Anyone can do that with the right messaging. And I think sometimes we get caught up in this idea that it just has to be policy driven. People sometimes make decisions about voting based on how a party makes them feel. Do I feel like I can come into this party with maybe some flaws, but they're still going to embrace me? Or am I going
Mm-hmm.
to come to this party and maybe there's some things we don't agree with, and they're going to call me names, say I don't belong, question my credibility as a Democrat, and say I don't belong here, when in fact I'm with them 80% of the time. So I think it's a
Come on.
purity test I
Preach,
just described.
preach, preach, preach. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, do you want to win or don't you? We know the difference between right and wrong. And I will say this: I mean, the far left and the progressives sometimes get a bad. People say, well, both sides have extremes, but here is the difference: the extremists on the Democratic side of the ledger, they still want to do good for the American people. The extremists on the Republican side of the ledger want to tear government down. They want to undermine trust in institutions. And sometimes I want to ask them, why are you an elected official if you hate government so much and it's so bad?
Mm.
So
Mm.
at a minimum, it's Democrats versus Republicans. And I pride myself, Don, on being bipartisan when I can, because we do have a lot of things in common. But we're talking about the future of this country, the future of democracy, and the soul of this nation. We have got to just become united and figure out what is it that Black folks do when they vote that makes them say, it's not perfect, but this is going to reduce harm, and this is what I need to do.
Wow. Can you please become like, the minority leader or the majority leader? But um, that was a perfect segue to my next question. By the way, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah,
And okay, quickly, because I want to talk about, you said what black voters do. That was a perfect
yeah,
segue. But I do have to ask you, how do you get the folks in your party to understand that? How do you get through to them
yeah. I
to
mean, I
understand the
think,
things that
yeah,
you said?
yeah. I mean, I think that's what's tricky, right? And we do lots of research and polling, and it's a fact that in this last election, we did lose some Latino voters, we lost some Asian American voters, and we did lose some Black men. And so I think part of the question for me is, how do we get them back into the fold? And I've been on the road talking to folks, and I will tell you, Dom, what I'm hearing folks say is that we think the Democrats are going to judge me because I may not be with you 100% of the time. I've
Hmm.
heard Asian American voters say, I am an entrepreneur, I'm pro business. But every time I hear you talking negatively about business, I feel like you don't care about my concerns. I've heard Latino voters say, you think that we all are of the same mind when it comes to immigration. And a lot of us actually support strong border enforcement, but we want to see a path to citizenship for those of us who are here working hard because I had to wait to get here. And so I think the mistake the Democrats make sometimes, Don, is that folks make big assumptions about communities of color, like we're all a
Hmm.
monolith and we all belong in a certain category of being a Democrat, when in fact we are as diverse as anyone else.
Yeah.
I lost track of your question. What did you ask
No,
me?
no, no. But here's the thing. I'm going to show you. No, no, you're right. So, are you looking at my notes?
I'm
Because
not looking
right
at
here,
your
I'm like,
notes.
this is what I want to talk about: the future of the Democratic Party. And look what I said. How do Democrats? Is what I said. How do Democrats win back Black and AAPI voters
Yes.
from the GOP? And that's where you were going. So how do they?
Yeah. And I would say another thing too, and there is complete justification for feeling some kind of way about this, but we have to talk about public safety because
Mm,
public safety is not synonymous with letting bad cops do whatever they want. People want to live in safe neighborhoods. And I think sometimes we forget that that's a very important priority for most people. Going back to the basics: housing, safety, a good job, access to healthcare, a dignified retirement. Just and leave us alone and let us live our lives. I just think that's the basis of where the Democrats have to go when it comes to what we're going to deliver for the American people. But we have to define the GOP because they define us all the time and we're just caught flat footed and we never define them.
hmm. Do you
It's a
think that?
lot.
No, it is a lot, but no, you're very bright, and I think that you're very obviously intelligent to get where you are. But that's really an intelligent, um, and a comprehensive, progressive, but based in reality. What you just said, and not very
Yeah.
many people do that in politics these days. So I have to give you your props. I have to give you your flowers on that. Do you
Thank you,
think
Don.
you think that you'll get there before the midterms, and because I think the midterms are going to be extremely important. I even
Yeah.
heard, gosh, what was his name? Senator, I can't remember his name. It'll come to me.
Where's he
He,
from?
he was at North Carolina,
Okay.
um, Republican
Okay.
from North Carolina, saying that he thought that it was a mistake for Mike Johnson to, give you guys an early recess because he thought this was only going to metastasize it. He said it's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow, and it's going to
Yep.
be like The Walking Dead, and it's going to come back to haunt them. And
Yep.
so, I'm just wondering, and he thinks this is gonna have an impact into the midterms. He said the elections next year. So
Yep.
Democrats get moving.
Yeah, get moving and don't be afraid to define the votes that they're taking. I mean, they've already taken votes in the Rules Committee to not deal with Epstein, and it's only going to
It
come
was
back. I
Tom
think to your
Tillis,
point.
by the way. It was Tom
Yeah,
Tillis. Sorry.
yeah. Oh, Tom Tillis. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not going away. It is not going away, and trying to send us home early is not going to make it go away. When we go home in August and we're in the districts, I guarantee you, people are going to be asking us. They're going to ask us about it. That's going to happen, and
Mm.
so as Democrats, we have to be smart, we have to be strategic. And I still come back to this idea of how are we going to win? And, I say this with love and affection to everyone who's a Democrat, but we can't get all in our feelings if it's going to compromise our ability to win. Let's take the House back by a good margin. Let's learn from that. Let's be strong and unapologetic about our message for 2028. And let's get this country back on track by taking the White House. And we have a chance to take the Senate back too. But we have to be very thoughtful and very strategic, Don, and unapologetic about this is what it's going to take to win.
Are you paying attention to the mayoral race here in New York City?
I wasn't at all. And I say this as a former mayor, right? And so, no, I mean, I'm more focused on the people in my district, in my state, and just trying to get through this place called Congress. And so I'm aware of, of what's going on, but I usually don't pay that much attention to mayoral races outside of my own district.
Well, that was the reason I should have prefaced my question with this, but listen, my question is sort of tangential. That's the reason why I mentioned Mamdani. Mamdani is because of the progressive side of the party, and it seems like it worked here in New York City, but not everywhere is New York City. That was pretty.
And you know what? And he's a dynamic candidate, and he has tapped into something that's important to the New Yorkers who showed up. But I think to your point, New York is a very blue city and a very blue state. And more power to New Yorkers, but that's not reflective of the entire country and how you win a national election. And so not taking his flowers away from him, but it's interesting to watch this unfold. And he's a great communicator. And I think that's something we can learn from as Democrats.
Are you looking forward to going back home? And because you're going to hear directly from your constituents, they're going to have an earful for you. Are you ready for that?
Oh, no, I'm always ready for that. And you know why, Don? Because I came from local government. So every Tuesday evening, I would hear from folks on a regular basis.
Are you going to have a town hall?
I don't have one scheduled right now, especially because of security reasons. But we'll see what develops. But again, I just think that people are afraid. They're worried about their financial security, whether it's Medicaid, Social Security, people who are veterans who lost their jobs through the Veterans Administration. And there's just this complete climate of uncertainty. Businesses of all sizes, Don, are talking about the uncertainty. And so as these things unfold, over the summer, I think the Democrats have to be ready, and we have to respond rapidly to what's happened, but we have to have our own affirmative message as well and tell folks, what are we offering the American people?
I'm glad that you're interested in talking to people, because I think Republicans are going to get an earful if they do decide to schedule any town halls.
Yeah, they've been, they're on the run, they're hiding, they're trying to avoid people. And that tells you a lot about where they are. But I will say this though, Don, those of us inside the Beltway or inside the political bubble cannot assume that your average everyday person is paying as much attention to this as we are. Yeah. And I think we can never make that assumption. So whenever I meet with folks and I talk to them, I ask them first and foremost, what's on your mind? And I think that will give you a good gauge of where people are. Are people paying attention? Absolutely. But not to the degree that we do inside the Beltway and the bubble.
Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland of Washington State. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you for respecting and appreciating independent media. I wish you the best, and come back, please. We'd love to have you back.
I'd love to be back. Thank you so much, Don, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.